ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal that there is a particular kind of silence that settles over a man when he realizes he has not merely been lied to, but maneuvered. I imagine that is the silence that would fall over Brennan the moment he understands what Carly has done. Not a loud confrontation, not shattered glass, not even raised voices. Just that tightening behind the eyes, that small shift in posture that only the most observant would notice. Brennan is not built to explode. He is built to contain. And that is precisely why Carly's betrayal would land like a controlled demolition inside him, collapsing something structural that he never meant to construct in the first place. What makes it devastating is not that Carly lied. It is why she lied. Carly never betrays without justification. She betrays to protect, to control chaos before it consumes her, to shield Sonny, her children, or whatever fragile balance she believes she alone can maintain. In her mind, deception is strategy, and strategy is survival. But Brennan does not operate on that emotional calculus. For him, control is currency. Trust is leverage. When he allows someone close enough to influence him, it is a deliberate choice, not an accident. So, when he pieces together that Carly withheld information, redirected conversations, perhaps even used his access and his protection while secretly pursuing her own agenda, it does not feel like a romantic misstep. It feels like exposure. The first interaction after he knows would be almost unbearable to watch. Carly would sense something off immediately. Brennan's tone would be measured, too measured. His questions would carry edges disguised as curiosity. She would try to steer the conversation back to familiarity, to shared history, to that unspoken intimacy that has always given her confidence around him. But Brennan would not lean in the way he once did. He would lean back. He would let her speak. He would allow silence to stretch until she feels compelled to fill it, and in that space, Carly would begin to understand that she has miscalculated. The problem is that Carly never anticipates losing control of the emotional temperature in a room. She assumes she can always redirect, always reframe, always justify. Yet Brennan's shock would not manifest as fury, it would manifest as detachment. And detachment is something Carly cannot manipulate. She thrives in heat. She is dangerous in chaos. But a man who goes cold in response to betrayal is a different kind of threat entirely. Every calm sentence would feel like a quiet accusation. Every steady look would remind her that he is reevaluating not just her actions but her character. And that is where the rift deepens into something more strategic. Brennan would not storm away. He would not even necessarily end things outright. Instead, he would recalibrate. He would decide that if Carly views relationships as tools in a larger game, then he will stop being a piece and start becoming a player again. The emotional intimacy he once allowed himself to feel would retreat behind calculation. In his mind, this is not revenge. It is restoration of balance. Enter Turner. Turner represents something Brennan desperately needs in the aftermath of Carly's betrayal: structure without emotional volatility. She is intelligent, composed, legally disciplined, and not easily swayed by personal history. Where Carly is instinct and impulse, Turner is analysis and restraint. That contrast alone would draw Brennan in, but what makes it compelling is that his turn toward Turner would not be purely romantic at first. It would be about regaining footing. Turner does not require him to decipher hidden motives. She meets him with clarity. She challenges him without manipulating him. And for a man who has just realized he was being quietly maneuvered by someone he trusted, that clarity feels intoxicating. Yet nothing in Port Charles exists in isolation. Turner is not untouched by Sonny's gravitational pull. Sonny and Turner already exist in that precarious space between professional opposition and personal chemistry. There is tension there, layered and complicated, driven by their shared understanding of power. Sonny is not a man easily threatened, but he is territorial in ways he rarely articulates. If he senses Brennan's attention shifting toward Turner, especially at a moment when his own dynamic with her is intensifying, that sense of calm dominance he projects would begin to crack. This is where the story becomes a tightening circle rather than a straight line. Brennan, wounded and recalculating, grows closer to Turner. Turner, balancing professional ambition and personal curiosity, finds herself drawn into Brennan's steadiness while still feeling Sonny's magnetic unpredictability. Sonny, watching both of them, becomes more vigilant. And Carly, standing just outside this triangle, realizes too late that her betrayal did not just wound Brennan, it redirected him. The most painful part for Carly would not be losing Brennan's affection. It would be watching him offer to Turner the kind of emotional steadiness he once reserved for her. There is something uniquely cruel about seeing someone become calmer, sharper, more focused after you break their trust. It suggests that your presence was the variable destabilizing them. Carly would struggle with that realization. She would tell herself that Brennan is acting out of pride. She would insist that his interest in Turner is reactive, temporary, a calculated move to regain control. But beneath that rationalization would be the quiet fear that she misjudged how deeply he felt and how deeply he could detach. The interactions between Brennan and Carly after this shift would be electric in the most restrained way. He would still speak to her, he would still listen, but the warmth would be gone. In its place would be an almost surgical precision. He would no longer volunteer information. He would no longer step in automatically to shield her. And for Carly, who was accustomed to being at the center of loyalty, that absence would sting more than anger ever could. Meanwhile, Sonny's involvement escalates the tension beyond romance. If Turner begins leaning toward Brennan, even subtly, Sonny's reaction would not be overt jealousy. It would be strategic repositioning. He might start pulling Turner closer professionally, offering protection, advice, shared objectives that naturally increase their proximity. Not because he is consciously competing, but because he does not surrender influence easily. The result is a dangerous loop. Brennan grows closer to Turner to distance himself from Carly. Sonny grows closer to Turner to maintain his hold on the shifting balance of power. Turner becomes the axis around which both men rotate, whether she intends to be or not. And in this loop, no one is truly in control. That is the irony at the heart of the storyline. Carly betrays Brennan to control an outcome. Brennan turns to Turner to regain control of himself. Sonny tightens his connection to Turner to maintain control of the emotional and strategic landscape. Yet every move tightens the knot instead of loosening it. Each decision creates new vulnerabilities. Each interaction carries subtext heavy enough to fracture alliances. From my perspective, what makes this arc so compelling is that it is not driven by villains or clear moral lines. It is driven by pride, fear, loyalty, and the desperate need to avoid being the one left exposed. Brennan's shock is not weakness. It is the catalyst for evolution. Carly's betrayal is not malice. It is instinct taken too far. Turner is not a pawn. She is a force navigating male power structures with her own agenda, and Sonny, ever the quiet storm, becomes the unpredictable variable that could ignite the entire structure if pushed too far. If this story unfolds slowly, with glances that linger a second too long, conversations layered with double meanings, and strategic moves disguised as romantic interest, it could build into something explosive. The tension would not erupt in a single confrontation. It would simmer. It would spread through boardrooms and living rooms, through whispered confidences and calculated alliances, and when it finally breaks, it will not simply be about who loves whom. It will be about who underestimated whom. Because in Port Charles, betrayal is never just personal, it is political. And once Brennan decides he will never again be blindsided by Carly, he may become far more dangerous than she ever anticipated. If Turner and Brennan begin their alliance with a single shared objective, destroying Sonny's empire, then the most dangerous element of this storyline is not the target, but the fracture forming beneath their partnership. At first, their collaboration appears disciplined and strategic. Brennan brings calculated precision and long-range thinking, while Turner brings legal authority and moral credibility. Together, they do not look like emotional enemies seeking revenge. They look like reformers reshaping Port Charles. That calm alignment is what makes them formidable. Sonny, used to surviving emotional vendettas and impulsive threats, may initially underestimate them because this does not feel personal. It feels institutional. Yet the deeper Turner works beside Brennan, the more she senses something beneath the surface that does not align with the clean mission she believes they share. Brennan's hatred of Sonny feels layered, not purely strategic. There are pauses when Sonny's name comes up, guarded silences when Turner presses for operational transparency, subtle redirections whenever discussions approach Brennan's past. Turner's instincts begin to sharpen. She starts noticing patterns, financial links, suppressed investigations, encrypted communications that hint at old operations intersecting with Sonny's territory. Nothing blatant, nothing that screams guilt, but enough to suggest that Brennan's history with Sonny is far more intertwined than he has admitted. What begins as suspicion slowly transforms into realization. Brennan may not simply be Sonny's enemy. He may have once been his silent collaborator. This discovery destabilizes Turner's moral footing. She aligned with Brennan believing she was targeting corruption, but now she suspects she is standing between two versions of the same power structure, one overt and one refined. When she confronts Brennan cautiously, he does not deny everything. Instead, he reframes the past as necessary alliances, strategic compromises made to prevent worse chaos. He presents himself as a man who once worked beside Sonny to contain larger threats but now seeks to correct that history. Yet Turner hears ego beneath the justification. She hears unfinished rivalry. She sees the possibility that Brennan's mission is not about justice, but about dominance. Meanwhile, Sonny senses a shift. He recognizes doubt in Turner's tone and understands that hesitation can be more powerful than hostility. Rather than attack Brennan directly, Sonny allows subtle truths to surface, hinting at shared history without fully exposing it. Turner finds herself trapped in a tightening triangle, Brennan urging her to stay focused on dismantling Sonny, Sonny quietly implying that Brennan's hands are equally stained, and her own conscience demanding clarity. The final blow comes when Turner uncovers documented proof that Brennan once authorized operations that directly strengthened Sonny's expansion, not reluctantly, deliberately. The war she thought she was fighting collapses into something more complex. If Brennan removes Sonny, he does not cleanse the city, he absorbs the vacuum. Turner's realization becomes explosive because it reframes everything. She is no longer hunting a villain, she is navigating a power struggle between two men who have both benefited from the same corrupt ecosystem. Brennan underestimated her capacity to investigate him as thoroughly as she investigated Sonny. He believed he could manage her perception, guide her focus, and control the narrative. Instead, Turner evolves into something far more dangerous than an ally. She becomes an independent force, holding evidence that could destroy them both. The tension intensifies because there is no clean outcome. If she exposes Sonny, Brennan's past resurfaces. If she exposes Brennan, Sonny gains leverage. Either way, Port Charles faces upheaval. From my perspective, the most compelling direction is not Turner choosing one side, but rejecting both. The oscillation within her between ambition, attraction, doubt, and duty becomes the engine of the story. She realizes the true enemy is not a single man, but the architecture of power that allowed both men to thrive. And once she understands that, the alliance with Brennan becomes unstable, the rivalry with Sonny becomes strategic rather than emotional, and the city stands on the brink of an explosion that is no longer about love or revenge, but about exposure. In that moment, Turner is no longer part of the war. She becomes the spark, capable of igniting it. What changes everything is not a courtroom argument or a strategic alliance. It is the moment Turner realizes she is genuinely drawn to Sonny. At first, she dismisses it as professional curiosity. Sonny is powerful, unpredictable, and unapologetically complex. For someone like Turner, who has built her identity on discipline and moral structure, he represents the opposite of everything she claims to stand for. And yet that contradiction is precisely what unsettles her. Sonny does not pretend to be clean. He does not hide behind legality. He stands in his choices, even the darkest ones, with a confidence that challenges Turner's rigid sense of right and wrong. That honesty within corruption begins to blur the lines she once believed were absolute. The attraction does not make her reckless, it makes her conflicted. Turner has aligned herself, at least strategically, against Sonny's empire. She understands the damage tied to his name. But as she spends more time near him, she sees layers that complicate the narrative. His loyalty to family, his willingness to protect at any cost, the quiet vulnerability he rarely shows. These glimpses create fractures in her certainty, and once doubt enters, it cannot be contained. Now Turner stands at a crossroads. On one side is the path of ambition and principle, continuing the effort to dismantle Sonny's power, preserving her credibility, proving she cannot be swayed. On the other side is something far more dangerous, acknowledging that her feelings could alter her judgment. If she chooses Sonny, she risks undermining her own authority. If she rejects him, she must silence a part of herself that feels unexpectedly alive. This internal war reshapes the entire canvas of General Hospital. Brennan, sensing her hesitation, may question her loyalty. Sonny, perceptive as ever, will recognize the shift and decide whether to pursue it or protect her from the fallout. And Turner, caught between desire and duty, becomes the unpredictable center of the storm. Her choice will not just affect a romance, it will tilt alliances, ignite rivalries, and redefine the balance of power in Port Charles.